myself. My name is Amber Olkers. I'm one of the writers for the Diz Insider. We are mainly a Disney-focused company, so those are going to be the questions I'll be asking you today.
Yeah.
But if you guys wouldn't mind by introducing yourselves real quick.
Sure.
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, I'm Christopher Willis. Do you want me to spell it? I sometimes
No, you're okay.
And I am a composer and songwriter, and I do a lot of work for Disney, as you know.
Yes.
And this is my wife, Elyse Willis.
Hi, I'm Elyse Willis. Yes, I am a singer and we write songs together for Disney. We've worked on a number of Disney projects in that capacity. And yeah, we're very fortunate to have this nice relationship with Disney.
Well, that's amazing. So we might as well start there. Can you tell me how you got involved with the Walt Disney Company as a whole?
Yeah,
Going back.
I guess I'm trying to think, maybe for both of us, Winnie the Pooh is the first Disney project.
Actually, of course, in my capacity as an
Oh,
assistant,
that's
I
true,
actually
yeah.
had done a few things before then. I'm trying to actually think what would the first one be? Bedtime stories?
Maybe, yeah.
I think so, yes. So I did a very, very typical thing. Coming to LA as a composer from another country, a lot of people do that. A lot of the composers in town are from somewhere else. And getting a job in someone else's studio. So I did that for a great film composer and a good friend called Rupert Gregson-Williams. And so I worked for him for a few years, starting in about 2008. And so my first Disney experience was on one of his movies, which was Bedtime Stories, which was a live action Adam Sandler Disney movie.
Yes, I have seen that one.
And that was,
She's like, I'm familiar.
yeah. And so yeah, that was very educational for me. The character goes off to all these different places, and we had to do some Wild West music and some fairy tale music and all sorts of things, some outer space music. So that was my first experience. But then, yeah, Winnie the Pooh is interesting because, again, I was working in someone else's studio. I was working with Henry Jackman on that, and you were hired to be in the choir.
That's right.
So
There's a little sprinkling of choir in that, and that was when we were dating.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, so that was technically the first project that we worked on together.
I remember when we got the sort of CD liner notes and realized that our names were kind of on opposite pages of the same thing, and so that was pretty cool. Yeah.
But yeah, I started doing session work, you know, like very luckily getting hired to sing on films and TV scores. And so over the years that ended up involving a lot of Disney projects. And then when Chris started doing the Mickey Mouse shorts, then I started getting involved as a contractor, so hiring other singers as well as singing on it. And then eventually we started writing songs together. So just sort of developed organically. Yeah.
The needs for singers on the Mickey shorts were quite they were high profile, and they were strange, and they were specific, and Elyse was brought on to help with that. And so because it was so complicated, and because you were actually singing on lots of them too, you actually started to get to know the team, and kind of, you know, you were coaching Rusi Taylor, and that was actually on the ride later. But yeah, there was a sort of overlap that started happening organically.
Yeah, I would do like demo, like scratch vocals for the characters sometimes.
Right.
If there were songs or musical moments that they needed, you know, someone to give them like a guide track. So so I started kind of doing that as well. That's how I met Rusi. Yeah.
Cool. Well, going back to Mickey Mouse, so he is such an iconic character. He's literally like the pinnacle of Disney. How does it feel to be, you know, making the music that brings that character to life in the modern day?
Well, it is rather intimidating. Of course, it's a lot to take on. I think I was helped by the fact that I knew it was that this particular Mickey Mouse in the shorts, you know, the group which were trying to do their own thing. I felt like I got Paul Rudish, and he got me. He's the showrunner, at an early stage, and he was really steeped in Disney lore. He loves Imagineering, and he loves the parks, and he loves the sort of old properties that are, you know, that don't exist anymore, the old IP. So I've generally sort of focused my efforts on doing things that you know, that I knew he would like, and that the group that he put together would like, rather than sort of worrying about what, you know, the whole of the world would think. So we would a lot of the time trying to make each other laugh with the jokes and trying to get a flavor that we thought was cool. And actually, I must say, it was only over the years, as I researched more and as I met more people and as we did more projects, that in some ways I realized what a big deal it had been and what a big deal it had been. So in some ways I was protected by ignorance. But because we were always interested in these little Easter eggs and then doing research, and I always loved doing research, it was fun for me to go off and look at old aspects of Mickey Mouse and research them and wink and nod to them. So that always felt like a plus, like a fun thing, rather than, you know, a sort of a difficult thing or a problem. So
right.
So that's kind of how we started.
And then now, so you guys are you taking Mickey Mouse even more forward into his first ever ride at the parks? You guys did the music for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Can you talk to me a little about that and how making music for a ride differs from, you know, live action or animated property?
Yeah, well, the first I heard about the ride was from the people on the shorts, was from Paul, and again, I think we were very fortunate in that there was a desire at Imagineering for the ride to have the same kind of humor, some of the same ambience as the shorts, and so they really wanted to know who the team was and to bring as many of them over to the ride as they could. So again, we had a sense that they wanted what we were selling rather than us sort of being constantly on our guard or worried, which is good because there wasn't a lot to learn. It is very different. It's different culture. There are all sorts of weird ad hoc problems that come up with a ride. You know, in a cartoon, you can control what's happening. You know, you can it's mad, but you're controlling what the viewer is seeing,
right.
and the way that things flow. And you can actually be quite abstract about it. You can say, oh, you know, this moment the music is so important that we're just going to not have any sound at all, or this music, or at this moment we're going to do the opposite, or at this moment, you know, Mickey's reaction is so important that the background is going to disappear, and all there's going to be is Mickey's face with like a sort of star shape behind him. And in a ride, you want that immediacy, but you can't do that. So there are a million challenges and questions of like, oh, what do we do when the front of the train is in that room and the back of the train is in this room, and there's music coming from that side and there's music coming from that side.
And also with a cartoon, like a TV show, like the shorts, the timing is locked and nothing changes with the timing. On a ride, something can go wrong and a train can get stuck in a room for an extra 10 or 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then of course, when the ride stops, everyone is stuck where they are. So it's not like you just have to sort out what happens if you're in this one particular room. Everyone gets stuck. So every room has to have these like multiple contingency plans.
Right.
And so, of course, that usually means additional music, which means when you're writing and recording all this music, you are often recording all this stuff that some people may literally never hear ever. You know, even if they go on the ride 50 times, if the ride never breaks down, then they'll never hear any of this additional stuff.
That's true. It's always funny. You turn up to record with this big book of music, even though you know the ride is only going to be about 5 minutes long. You've got all this stuff that you still have to lavish care and attention on, even though you know that a lot of people won't see it. But I was also thinking, in many ways, the ethos is the same. It's a story, a ride. In this case, it's a musical story. So in many cases, a lot of the same instincts come into play. So we were brought on early on to write the song. That's just like you do with a musical. You know, you have to sort of set up what the song is going to be, and then you worry about the underscore and the
Mhm.
variations of the song that the orchestra play way, way later. So in some ways it was reassuring, even though there's a lot of strange new aspects.
Well, and also the song for the ride starts like you're watching a short. So that assignment was actually very similar to things that we'd done on the
That's
shorts.
true. It's like, okay, we can do
previously.
this. You know.
Yeah, it was actually an afterthought to finish the song in the way that it was released. Like if you look
Oh.
it up on Spotify,
Mhm.
because when you're on the ride, you never actually hear that last like little verse or whatever we're
Yeah.
calling it, stanza of the
Oh,
song.
okay.
Because chaos ensues, and then you end up going on the ride, and then you get the sort of big choral finale version at the end of the ride, which is so satisfying on the ride. But if you release that as its own thing, it makes no sense because you haven't gone through the whole journey of the ride.
Right.
So we had to sort of finish the song as if that was the version that they would have finished in the episode had the thing not happen. I don't want to like give away any spoilers if people don't know. I guess probably people know at this point what happened, but something happens and you don't get to the end of the original version of the song.
It's very familiar to us from the cartoons that if we wrote a song that it might not finish, or that it would be this very odd thing. And you always see people on YouTube saying, "Oh, I want the full version of the song. Where is that?"
Yes.
Like,
sort of thinking,
it does not exist.
No.
Yeah, we ran out of money, and that was But
Wow.
on the ride, we had to kind of think of it differently and think, there's going to be a huge desire for that. In this case, it should exist.
Yeah. And not to be like morbid or anything, but fortunately we decided to do that and record it while Rusi was still around, because it could have ended up being such an afterthought that we didn't even get to it until the ride was opening, and she had unfortunately passed away by then. So we're so happy and grateful that we got it recorded while she was still able to do that.
Yeah. This project just seemed
to have her on it.
Yeah. No, this project just seemed like such a massive undertaking for you guys and very multifaceted. Would you call it one of the most challenging projects that you've worked on?
Well, I was, I'm sort of just an auxiliary role on this, like just mostly supporting him. I mean, we did write the song together, but all the vocals and everything are, those come later. Chris definitely had very heavy lifting on this ride. Taking that melody and making it work in all these different contexts on the ride.
Looking back, I was a real glutton for punishment, actually, because I really wanted to use the cue line of the ride as an opportunity to expand on a lot of stuff from the shorts, because the nature of the Mickey shorts was the way we describe, or a lot of things sound like they might have been taken from some larger piece of music, and they aren't. What you hear is all there is. Even
just like a melody that you feel like must have a conclusion because it sounds so well thought out. But because if you never hear it in the episode, there was literally never a reason to actually finish the melody. So it was a nice opportunity for Chris to get to actually take some things to fruition that had been left open-ended for, in some cases, many years.
Yeah. So I actually was the sort of one who spearheaded the idea of doing that. But then if you add up all of the music in the ride, including all of the stuff that is in reserve, as we were saying, and then all of the music in the cue line, which I sort of did kind of a year later, it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff. It's very funny for us when we go on the ride, because it all sounds so familiar, and in particular because Elyse sings on so many of my things. You're hearing enormous amounts of Elyse singing, and of our friends, playing the instruments and singing the other parts all the way through the queue and the ride. It just, to us, it sort of all feels like it couldn't really be a real ride. It feels
it's like a hoot nanny at our house or something. Like, oh, there's Eric, there's Reed, there's me, the mermaid. It's just
you're looking so strange. Around. Are people buying this? Is this Are people happy, like spying on your neighbors in the queue to see if they...
Well, like when we went to Florida for the opening of the ride in Disney World, which it was its own weirdness because it opened like a week and a half before the pandemic shut everything down.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
It opened on March 4th, 2020. So, and there was really no indication that anything was odd, even like that close to everything happening.
That's right.
But we were just like, we went on the ride and we were just like, wait outside the exit and like listen to people talk about the ride, like whether they liked it or not.
Oh, that's gotta be so terrifying.
I mean, people loved it.
People loved it.
You know, there was that whole thing with the Great Movie Ride out there. So that was an extra layer of like complexity of people's emotions about it.
Oh, that was amazing. I apologize if this is any of your colleagues, but on that opening day, we were acutely aware of people who turned up with their Great Movie Ride shirts.
Oh no.
We were sometimes standing next to them in the ride, like before they'd ridden it, you know,
like,
you know.
Yeah, my gosh.
Ripping it apart. And
well, I have to say, I'm very excited for it to come to California. So I can't wait for the whole Toontown renovation.
Yeah, the nice thing about the version here is that it's not replacing anything. Well, actually, weirdly, I teach these performing arts workshops at Disneyland, and I actually did take over the building, some of the buildings that we used to work in, which I'd like only been working there like 6 months, and I was like, oh, sorry about our ride coming in and ripping us out. But it's not like replacing another like beloved ride. And you know, Toontown, I think probably most people would agree, would benefit from, you know, revamping and having something additional added to it. So that is actually really nice that we don't have to contend with that same like nostalgic, you know, like, oh, this is fun, but like, what about that thing, you know? So it's kind of like a fresh start, which is great.
That's right. And actually, this is in danger of getting a bit inside baseball, but if you're building a new building, that's actually quite helpful rather than renovating another building. And there's another effect which I'd never considered, which is that if most of the creative people live in California, then they can go down to visit.
Yes.
To give their 2 cents and to figure out some tricky things much more easily than they can with Florida. If people are just flying over to Florida briefly, and then maybe they only have one chance. It's interesting how much difference that makes. Disneyland is kind of on everyone's, you know, doorstep.
Right. So Elyse, not only do you sing on a lot of what Chris composes, but you're also in the LA Master Chorale performing at the Walt Disney Concert Hall. Can you talk to me a little bit about yes, and I love it. Can you talk to me a little bit about the difference between performing live and being in the studio recording?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty big difference. Obviously, when you're performing live, you have one shot to get it right. It's also, though, in some ways a little bit more forgiving. You know, people understand that it's happening live, and if something weird happens, it's like, well, that's live performance, you know, and that's, you know, and things happen. I mean, the nice thing about singing in a choir or playing in an orchestra, which I grew up doing both, is, you know, you have all the support around you. And like, if you have a moment where something weird happens, like your neighbor next to you is like, I got you, you know, and vice versa. Like we're very aware of each other and helping each other out. And so it really, you know, it's a very supportive community. And you do feel that in the studio as well when you're recording ensemble stuff, but obviously in the studio, you can do it as many times as you need to get it right. Or there are like edits that you can do to make sure you get it right. I mean, time is money, so you can't spend forever on things, but there are a lot of workarounds, you know, to get what you need to get versus doing it live. But yeah, of course, when you record something, it exists like that forever. And so you do want to make sure that you're actually accomplishing what you set out to accomplish. So, you know, they're both fun and challenging in their own ways. And I really am very fortunate that I get to do both things. That, you know, I think doing one makes you better at the other. They really do go hand in hand.
And then
when we do record, it's really nice if you can do long takes when you can, because something happens when people are performing or just doing something at length. The adrenaline gets going and everyone responds to the other people. And
and like sometimes if we're recording like a character. Like if we're working with, you know, Christy Matopoulos, who voices Mickey on the shorts, a lot of times, you know, we'll do, like if there's a song that he's singing, we'll do the song in chunks, right? We'll be like, okay, we'll get these measures, we'll get these measures, these measures. But then a lot of times at the end of all of that, after he's feeling, you know, maybe a little more comfortable with the song itself and like has, you know, tried out some different things in different places, we might do like a take or two of the whole thing all the way through. And oftentimes that ends up being the best, or there'll be bits of that we put in the final.
That's right.
Just because it does have a different energy if you are just performing it all the way through.
It's a very funny process. You don't want to rely on that happening, so you have to go through saying, okay, I think we've got it. But then you may, in the last 5 minutes of the session, you may do 2 takes that blow everything else out of the water, or almost. Like, oh wow, okay, well let's just use that.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
And then Chris, okay, I have to ask, I am a very huge Lion King fan. And I know that you worked on the Lion Guard for all of its seasons. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that was like? I know you talked about how you enjoy research. Were you listening to a lot of Lebo M, or what was involved in that process?
Definitely, yeah. And listening to lots of ethnographic recordings from sub-Saharan Africa to sort of learn about instruments that I didn't know about, and vocal techniques, and a lot of vocal groups. Like the Kenyan Boys Choir is a great example. Just wonderful, wonderful, you know, choral traditions over there. That was the big thing when we started the Lion Guard. We knew that that it wanted to have that feeling, and we knew that the Lion King had been a real trip for everyone involved. It had a real all-star team of people, because you had Lebo M, and you had Hans Zimmer, and you had Elton John, and it was just insane. And I don't know if they went to South Africa or if the choir came here, but anyway, there were these big sessions with genuine groups that would have had to have learned the music from Lebo M. And they would have done things a lot of, you know, experimentally and figured them out in the studio, and we just couldn't do most of that kind of thing. We had a sort of weekly schedule to figure that sort of thing out in a different way. So my solution, was to do kind of what I often do, which is to just do lots of homework myself. And in the end, we used singers in LA. We used SAG singers that could read incredibly well, and I was writing those charts that in the case of the movie might have been improvised, or might have been layered up without writing anything down. So I sometimes, especially later on in the show, write these big charts, like 3 or 4 choirs singing on top of each other with these kind of extra lines and shouts and spoken bits. And I was incredibly lucky that we had these singers that could sight read so well that we could stack this thing up and do it, say, with only 4 singers, but it ends up sounding like, you know, 50 singers.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
we're giving away all of our secrets.
Yeah.
Speaking of secrets, so you guys are in a very unique situation where you are a married couple who gets to work on a lot of the same kind of stuff, but I imagine that you also have projects that you guys work on separately. So how do you keep that kind of work-life balance? And if there's, you know, sometimes things you can't discuss with each other, how does that work?
Oh, it's easy.
We just talk about it with each other.
Yeah.
NDAs don't exist here.
Yeah, totally.
No, I mean, we're a really good support system for each other. You know, even if we're not directly involved in each other's projects, we understand the kind of lifestyle, and we understand the challenges that the other person has. And I think that's, you know, I don't think it's impossible to not be married to someone in your field, but I think in our case, it helps a lot because like his schedule is insane. And if
I can imagine,
if I didn't understand what he was dealing with on a daily basis, I would just be angry all the time that he like wasn't home and he missed that thing again. And you know,
it would be so hard to convey to someone else, and it would seem like you were just doing it. It would like it's just it's just me doing this.
Yeah, like,
right.
are you like actually avoiding me? I haven't seen you in, but no, I mean, we understand the demands of it and the schedule. And, if there are things that I can do to help, like I'll often help him schedule meetings or book studio time. And so, if I can help in any way, I will. And he's always, very supportive, listening to me complain about things.
We have this constant ongoing joke when we eat out together, when we're paying at the end, and they're like
this is a business dinner, right?
This is basically a business dinner. Because we both just aired all of our current problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it.
Yeah.
But no, it's good. And then when we actually do get to work together, I think we have a pretty good working relationship. I mean, we've had to sort of learn to be a little bit more vulnerable with each other, in terms of like our creativity, because I think we're both a little like protective of our ideas until we feel like they're formed enough to actually show to another person.
Yeah,
and we've had to kind of be like, okay, we need to let that go. Like I need to see what you're thinking and what you're working on, and I need to be comfortable enough to be like, okay, look, I think this is kind of garbage, but this is what I've got right now, and so maybe something in here is something that you can be like, polishing the what out of that.
Right.
So,
yes.
Yeah, but it's hard. It's hard at first to open up and be okay with that.
I find often when I'm trying to write, when I'm at the start of something and trying to write a melody, I have like waves of ideas. I have one idea that I think is terrible, but I feel like I need to write it down just to have an idea, or that I think is wrong, but it's an interesting idea, so it's worth writing down, because it might be useful another time. And then I might have another idea that's sort of getting closer, and again I kind of need to write it down, and then I might the out of the feeling of, wow, I did have an idea and it was okay, I might immediately then have a third idea that actually is much better. And I'm sort of embarrassed about showing anyone the early ideas, because the third one is so sort of different from them, that I feel like if I make it real by showing someone the other ones, then I seem like an idiot because they're all wrong. So yeah, there are a few wrinkles that you have to work out when you're opening that up and letting someone else in.
I understand that. It's like having someone read one of my first drafts and I'm like, no, it's not finished yet.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be better, I promise.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. I have one last question before we part today. So I know that given this line of work, it's very unpredictable and spontaneous, and you never know what's coming in the future. But are there any upcoming projects, they don't have to be Disney related, that you guys are working on that you're able to share today?
Well, that's the problem, is able to share.
Oh no, NDAs do exist.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. There's some projects for Disney Plus that I've been involved in, mostly as a singer, some as like a contractor, even doing some conducting in sessions.
Oh, nice.
But I don't think I'm at liberty to talk about them yet, which is a real bummer. But I'll just say there's some really good stuff coming to Disney Plus soon. So
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm really excited about the things that I've been involved in. I think people are really going to like it. Is there anything else that we can? Well, there's season 2 of Schmeg.
Yes, which I am so looking forward to.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
A pilot for a thing, and I don't know if that's going to get greenlit, which would be a Disney thing, but I can't say anything about that. Schmeg are doing season 2. We're very, very excited for. I think the other thing I can say is that right now I'm in the midst of working on the queue line for the new Mickey Bride.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Which is going to be completely different from the one in Florida. And I didn't say anything about it, but it's been fun. There's a lot of this thing that you know really well in the style of this other Disney thing, kind of putting them together so that people who really know their Disney will get, I think, some laughs if they listen out carefully.
I am very excited.
A modern-ish thing in the style of like an older vintage thing, and what I'm hoping is that you may be in line and sort of click at a certain moment and wait, oh wait a minute, this is that, but it sounds like that. It's we're trying to make it fun and funny in the way that that we made the cartoons fun and funny.
Oh, that's perfect. I am definitely going to keep my ears open once that right. I'm going to hope for long lines just so I can stand in the queue for hours dissecting all of it.
Yeah,
Well,
it's gonna be fun. We're so excited for the ride to open. I mean, we don't know exactly when it's coming, but yeah.
And you're close, so you don't have to get on an airplane to come to the opening day of this one.
Yeah.
Very happy about that.
It's very funny when you're working on the queue line because you're looking at maps of the queue and you're lavishing this attention on it, and visually it's going to be wonderful as well. And then occasionally you're like, what's that? What's that thing along the side? Oh, that's the lightning lane. Those people aren't going to see anything.
Nope, yeah, they're just going to breeze right by.
Those people are paying money so they don't experience all this stuff.
Travesty. You need to pay money to hear this. It is quality.
I said it.
That's very funny, actually. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was a real pleasure speaking with you guys. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
All right. Thank you. Well, bye.